Hey guys, welcome to the Power Network. I'm Amy. Tonight, the family annihilator Chris Watts versus the Idaho 4 killer Bryan Kohberger when monsters make a deal. Two men, two brutal slaughters. One wiped out his entire family, the other butchered four innocent students in the middle of the night. Both stared down the death penalty, and both may have used a plea deal to dodge it. The ultimate punishment for the ultimate crime turned into a bargaining chip. And in both cases, it was the killer's own mothers who didn't want them to take the plea deal. Cindy Watts refused to accept Chris's guilt. Marianne Kohberger didn't want Bryan to plead guilty either. Two mothers clinging to denial, even when the evidence was stacked sky high. I'm rolling credits while the rest of the power crew floats in. Shout out to my dragonflies. You know I love you, babies.
Cavalier's drumming his old guitar again. Words rolling out into our fire. If heaven had wings, I would steal them and fly away with you for a while. Hearing the essence of gratitude, your dreamy little smile on my lips. I miss my cue, but baby, I had you. Miss my cue, but I had you for that day.
Hearing the essence of gratitude, I am so glad to be back here with my crew tonight. I keep thinking it's Wednesday, so I keep wanting to say on Weird Watts Wednesday, but I know it's not Weird Watts Wednesday. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Before we get started, I just want to say we may have some guests. Creators stopping by today. But before we get started, we do have a sponsor. And real quick, because you know I don't gatekeep good stuff, let's talk about Wild Deodorant. I have an autoimmune condition, so trust me, I know the struggle. My body does weird things, including sweat and a lot. So when I tell you Wild works, I mean it works. It's all natural, aluminum free, and good for sensitive skin. No harsh junk that makes my autoimmune stuff worse. The best part, it's refillable. No more tossing endless plastic tubes. Wild's packaging is reusable, so it's better for the planet and your pits. And because I don't want you paying full price, I got you a deal. Use my code PARAWOMEN for 20% off your first order. Just hit shopwildrefill.com/parawomen. Pick your scent, plug in Parawomen, and boom, you get to smell amazing. And I will put this down in the show notes and also in chat. So if you would like to support our channel, be sure to head over and check out our sponsor for tonight's show. And there it is right there in the down in the chat. So I have two questions that I want to go over tonight. The two are the Power Network. These are the panel questions. Should the death penalty ever be used as a bargaining chip to force a plea deal? Or should monsters like Watts and Kohberger have faced the ultimate punishment for the ultimate crime? And did these men plead guilty to spare their parents? Why did Cindy Watts and Marianne Kohberger fight so hard to stop their sons from pleading guilty? I have Robert from Timeless Mysteries here with me. I'm going to bring him up. He's going to stop by for a few minutes, he said. So, hi, Robert. How are you? Oops, you're muted.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I just got home. Kind of, you know how it is when you just get home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oops, there,
So,
that's better.
what do you think about these plea deals that both of these, oops, sorry, I meant to take this off. What do you think about the plea deals that both of these two gentlemen have garnered for themselves? Chris has already done
Well,
it, but now Bryan has.
I think I'm definitely pro death penalty as long as I don't have to be the one that has to push the button or pull the lever or whatever, be part of the firing squad. Um, but I don't know. I think death is too easy, and so maybe it's better that they have to suffer a little bit in prison. But when I hear that Chris Watts has got a girlfriend and he's thinking about getting married, it's like, WTF?
I know.
Like,
I know.
why are they allowed that? I mean, they're not supposed to have a life. That's why they're in prison.
Well, I did see there is a channel called Lawyer Lee, and let me get my screen together. I have it. Okay. Have you heard of Lawyer Lee?
I have not.
Well, she has a video out where she goes in. Actually, I'm just gonna put this up on the screen and then move it to the one I want to go to. She has a video where she talks about what Kohberger faces in prison is worse than what you think. And she talks about how awful the conditions are in the prison that he is in. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I think I saw this thumbnail pop up, but I didn't click on it. um,
Okay, so what we do is we'll stop and start things. We might talk over it, but I will put everything that we watch over in the YouTube show notes. And I do this for fair play use as well as to cite our sources. And before we get into it, I forgot, let's do this algorithm dance party that I like to do. Just warm up your fingers and dance them right up to the hearts and thumbs up buttons. Helps us go out into the algorithm, party out there, bring more people back. It's just a free way to help me out. And so she's talking about how awful it is going to be for Kohberger in prison.
The little guy anywhere in the prison or even in that road running by it. The closest you can get is right out here. And that's that view that I took you to where you see the view into the prison. So so it's not going to be something where I can show you all around the prison, but that's about as close as we can get. That is the prison itself with nothing.
So there's only one prison that he's going to be able to go to because of his charges, and it's this prison in Idaho. And she's bringing up this thing showing how bad it is, and I guess they don't get a lot of time out in the yard. And she goes into detail and talks about how, like, in order for them to even get out of their cell, they have to first put their shoes not on their body, but they have to push their shoes outside of the cell so they can be inspected. Then they've got to look at their feet, then they've got to put their hands out. And then she was talking about how the duct system in this prison is so horrible, and what the prisoners will do to one another, they will put urine and feces in the duct work, and it's never been cleaned, so it smells like urine and feces when the heat, or I don't know if they have air conditioning, but whenever the heat comes on. And the same is true with the yard. They will send them out into the yard, but there's no bathrooms out in the yard. They only get a half or an hour out there, but there's no bathrooms out there. So people will just go out there in the yard. And so it smells like urine and feces out there too.
that's kind of, I don't know. That's kind of gross. And I'm almost sympathetic, but then I'm reminded this guy is a murderer, and he doesn't deserve, he doesn't deserve this plea deal. He deserved to at least have the death penalty on the table. I'm actually a little disappointed that the trial didn't go forward. I was really expecting it to be a good trial. But it kind of, I don't know. I was kind of on the fence with Kohberger at the end, right before he took his plea deal. And I think a lot of people were also like leaning back and forth. Well, maybe I was wrong about him the whole time. I think he had a pretty good chance of, swaying a jury, at least a little bit of a chance, it's kind of surprising that he took a change of plea, and I don't know. It just kind of shocked me,
Well, I thought that we could look at some comparisons of the plea deals. And in Bryan Kohberger, there is an author. His last name, his name is Bloom. And he has been on Howard Bloom. He's been on a lot of shows, and he goes in and he talks about on the Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. He goes in and talks about why he feels like Kohberger took this deal. So I thought we could listen to a little bit of it.
Okay.
To his father, Michael Kohberger.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I thought it was up on the screen. Let me do it back. So this is Howard Bloom, and he's talking about how directly after the unalivings at the Idaho 4 house, he is on the phone making a phone call to his father's account, but it's a shared account, and Howard believes that it's actually not his father he talks to, but it's his mother.
To his father, Michael Kohberger.
Mm-hmm.
That is, again, just 2 hours after the murder, approximately. What was said, only Bryan Kohberger and to whomever he spoke with, only they know what was said. However, my reporting has revealed that he was largely talking on that conversation with his mother, Marianne Kohberger. And this becomes significant when we look to the evolution of the plea deal. Early on, I've been told that Ann Taylor, Kohberger's legal aid lawyer, was realizing, oh my gosh, my client really is guilty. And even worse, I'm not going to be able to raise reasonable doubt in a jury, and my client is going to have to face the long guns of a firing squad. And that scared her. So she approaches Kohberger and says, let's cut a plea deal. Kohberger calls his parents, and his mother says no. She just does not want her son to plead guilty, whether she thought she was innocent, whether she did not want to face the realization that he could be guilty at that moment.
When I heard this, it just piqued my little antenna, because doesn't this just sound so like Cindy Watts not wanting the plea deal? Like, no, don't take the plea deal, fight.
Yeah, kind of. I think it was a lot different with Cindy Watts. I don't think I've heard anything bad from Kohberger's family in the media. So,
well, let's keep going.
For whatever reason, she says no, and so they nix the plea deal. Then, in June, towards the middle of June, the Kohberger team tries 2 Hail Mary passes. They try to convince the judge that they have alternate perpetrators, that Kohberger was really the patsy in this whole case, that other people were the murderers. They planted a knife sheath there that had Kohberger's DNA in it. And they even file a motion with the judge naming these 4 people. And the judge reads this motion, Judge Hippler, and he says, not so fast. This is circumstantial evidence at best. It's allegations, not evidence. So that's thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's alibi defense. That's their second Hail Mary pass. They want people to think that Kohberger was off in a wilderness park in Washington State at 4 a.m. on a freezing, cloudy night stargazing. And the judge looked at this quote unquote evidence and he says, that alibi is not an alibi. So now they had no alibi defense. They had no alternative perpetrator theory they could introduce and no alibi. So they approached Kohberger again and said, look, for your own sake, to save you from the firing squad, which is the rule in Idaho, you really should consider cutting a deal. Let us go, give us permission to go to the prosecution, see if we can cut a deal. Kohberger once again calls up his parents. However, this time, his parents realize after the Dateline special that revealed the call that they might have to go on the stand, his mother might have to go on the stand and talk about what was said during that 54-minute phone call less than 2 hours after the murders.
There. That is what I think. I tend to believe that he wanted to. I feel like Chris Watts. Okay, so let's take a quick look at Cindy Watts talking about Chris not taking the plea deal and to fight.
Hearing from the mother of the man accused of the Colorado murders that shocked the country in a case with really close ties here to Charlotte. Chris Watts accused of killing his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their 2 daughters. The crime happened back in August. At that time, Chris Watts begged for his family's safe return. Now, in a plea deal made just last week, he pled guilty to all 9 charges against him. His mother now questioning the deal he took to avoid the death penalty, saying he was forced. NBC Charlotte's Ariel Placencia joins us now live this morning. So, Ariel, what exactly is she saying about the crime? Is she defending her son?
Well, Ben, Cindy Watts believes that her son Chris should fight. And she also says that his attorneys have kept her and her husband from giving any sort of input into this plea deal. And she says they've also limited their contact with Chris to almost nothing since his arrest.
I don't see why he's pleading guilty. I wouldn't. I'd fight.
Cindy Watts may question her son's plea deal, but there are details about the crime she can't seem to shake.
But then you ask yourself, would a normal person dispose of the bodies the way he did? It scares me to death to think that he could have done all of this.
Cindy says Chris became an auto technician, and in 2011, he met Shanann Ruzcek. They married the following year.
We didn't attend because Shanann and I just couldn't get along.
Despite that tension, the couple's daughters brought the entire family pure joy.
Oh, Bella was just like Chris. Cece was a ball of fire.
Cindy says Chris told his parents the couple was considering divorce. Then came the disappearance of pregnant Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. And Chris's claim that Shanann killed the children and that he murdered her in a rage. Then buried.
Do you think part of it is that neither one of the parents want to believe that their sons could do such heinous acts? So they both took the stance like, no, you didn't do this, just fight.
I try to, when I think of that, I try to ask myself, what would I do? And I think the instinct is, no, you're wrong. It's not my child that did that, even if it's a grown adult. So when Cindy, she at the time still believes what Chris told her, Chris is her son. She loves him. And he says what he says about how this all happened. And she immediately believed him because she wanted to believe him. And I think that at that point, everything is still good. It's just after the truth came out, she refused to believe it. It kind of seems like she just kind of refused to accept that he actually did it. And with Bryan Kohberger, it's a little bit different because there was no that dynamic there where Chris lied to his parents, like completely lied. I don't know that happened with Bryan Kohberger. He may have said, I didn't do it. But I think even in the situation where he would say, I didn't do it, and they believed him, it's a lot different than somebody else killed them and then I killed somebody in self-defense or out of a rage because I was trying to protect my kids. I mean, it's a whole kind of different scenario. No parent wants to believe their child's capable of this, even if it's like, playground altercations. You don't want your child to be the one that's starting these things. It's just kind of built in to your DNA. When you protect your kids, you kind of have to trust them and believe them, at least at first. I'm really shocked that Bryan Kohberger pled out,
Even after what we just heard, like he had no Hail Marys left, that his parents were going to have to take the stand, and there was that long car ride across country. There was he made 2 separate phone calls the night of the unalivings to this phone and talked for like an hour at a time. So they would have brought the parents up. I think he pled, and I think Chris pled too, because they didn't want their bad deeds to come to light in front of their parents, and they also didn't want to drag their parents into it. Here is another one it's a different interview with Howard Bloom talking more about the dad.
And still be unsure if you should say something.
Well, here's what I've been able to ascertain. From the moment that Michael Kohberger comes out to meet Bryan in Washington State, he realizes his son is in one of his moods. His son is particularly high strung. First, you have to think about this is Michael Kohberger. He's, at the time, I think he's 68 years old. He's flying out to Washington State and going to make a 4-day road trip across America. Money's tight, but he's flying out. He's doing all this because he's concerned about his son. The trip was planned before the murders, but he's always been concerned and perhaps feeling a bit guilty about Bryan and his problematic son, his former heroin addict son, his son who had visual snow. So now they get into a car, and immediately the father had very meticulously mapped out the route, and they were going to go north in a direct line, but Bryan wants to take a different route, and in retrospect, it looks like he feared he was being followed. So that was his concern. They're sitting in this car, shoulder to shoulder, in a white Hyundai Elantra. And the father has to know, as everyone in America almost knows, that the police are looking for a white Hyundai Elantra. And here he is in this white Hyundai Elantra with a son who's problematic at best, who just happens to live 9 miles away from where the murders occurred. And then they're stopped by the police. Not once, not twice. This too is giving momentum to his racing thoughts about, where does my son fit into all this? And you can see the first moment when the police come up to him, what he's talking about, and it's sort of non sequiturs. He's going off about a shooting that occurred at Washington State University. And you can see shooting and violence and death and the far west are in the forefront of his mind. And he's dealing with all this, and it's almost like a technique to distract him. He does not want to confront what's staring him in the face, that, oh my gosh, my son is the man they're looking for, and he could be involved in these murders. And throughout that whole trip, as they get closer and closer to Pennsylvania, as they leave Washington State behind, I think the father is coming closer and closer to the realization that my son is involved in this, as if he's been following footsteps in the snow, and the footsteps are going to lead him to the realization that the next bloody footsteps are my son's.
God. What a chilling way to kick off the Thanksgiving holiday. Robin?
So he's stating that even the father, it just dawned on me during this, Rob, the last time we did this, you weren't sure Bryan was guilty. Are you still saying you don't know if Bryan's guilty?
No, I'm just saying that I had, from the very beginning, I thought he was guilty until, like, just a few months ago, I started wondering, well, maybe I've judged him wrong. Maybe he is just this awkward guy that looks suspicious. But I mean, he admitted it. I have no doubt that he actually did it. And I think the first time I knew for sure that he did it was when his alibi came out, that he was out stargazing, and I looked it up, and it was a cloudy night. So he wouldn't have been stargazing. But yeah, that all the stuff that the defense attorneys did, the 911 call that came out, all the details that kept coming out, it kind of just, none of it added up in my head the right way. And it just was really weird. And I wasn't sure if he did it, because I do still think it's very odd that they waited so long to call 911. And then when I found out the door was actually open and they could have looked inside the entire time, it was just even weirder that they took so much time with the operator on the phone to actually open the door, but the door was already open. So, I mean, and then the possibility of more DNA being found at the crime scene, the fact that there was 4 people who were murdered, at the same time, it just seemed like either there was somebody else involved, or, well, I guess that's probably what I had most like. I mean, I thought it was more likely that there was 2 people that did this than 1. But when I saw that shower picture of him doing the thumbs up thing after the murders, I think I've even mentioned it once or twice about how Ted Bundy only killed 2 people whenever he attacked 4 or 5 people in a night. He only got 2. And then when it came out that he was, a big fan of Ted Bundy and he was trying to do that, it seems like maybe he was just trying to outdo Ted Bundy.
Didn't he get more the night of the sorority, though? I thought he got
He
more.
attacked 5 people, I believe, but he killed 2 people in the sorority house, raped one of those 2 that he killed, and then he broke the jaw, severely broke somebody's jaw, and attacked 2 people. One of them was severely injured, and I think she had to have her jaw wired shut for a long time. There's some interviews of her, fairly recent too, so she's still around, and I'm sure.
Well, I think one roommate only lived for one of 2 reasons. One was that he was just purely exhausted, because we see proof that after he did whatever he did to Xana and Ethan, he sat down for a moment in a chair. And that, or he didn't see her. He was just so out of it, and he just didn't see her. But I think that one roommate got really lucky.
I think so too. I've been wondering if he was actually on drugs. I didn't know he was a heroin addict until
you didn't
a
know
couple
that?
months. Well, I heard about it, but a few months ago. I didn't know about it from the very beginning. But I don't think people actually give up heroin. If you ever do it, you're just waiting for your next time to do it, I think, even if it's a
Well,
long
he had
period
went
of
into
time.
rehab, and so he had given it up, and that's but he I think if he was back doing heroin, he would have gone through some type of withdrawal when he was first in jail, and we didn't get any of that. So I don't,
That's a good point. Yeah. But I was just listening to that interview, and he said that his dad noticed he was kind of high strung. That was kind of what cued me into maybe drugs.
Well, Bryan has a lot of issues. I mean, he's got a lot of psychological and issues, and he had the whole thing where he would only make food that in pans that never had meat in them, and so he had that compulsive disorder, and he was supposed to be a high functioning autistic, but I kind of think there might be more to his diagnosis, but you can't really you're not supposed to diagnose someone if you have a background in psychology or whatever, unless they're in the room with you, and you're doing the DSM, and it's a formal situation. So but
yeah,
Bryan
I think he actually is looking forward to bragging to the psychiatrist. He's probably already dreaming about, having interviews like Bundy did.
Well, the
It's very-
psychiatrist that he took the class from, the one, the professor has come out and said that she's thought nothing but interviewing him and dissecting him for the last 2 years. So I'm sure that's part of that. He'll do it for sure. Some people are like, oh no, he won't. Oh yes, he will. Yes, he will. He
I
wants
think
to
he
be
wants the
researched.
notoriety. That picture, like now that you know that he did it, that picture of him in the shower,
Oh, it's
you
even
know,
worse, right?
like he's got he might be hiding his like ego, but he really has got some. It's just scary. Did they ever figure out? I mean, there's no motive right now that I know of. Because there's no trial, we don't find out any of this stuff, like why they think he did it. I know there was some rumors about
Well,
maybe some possible stalking after a pool party or something, but it hasn't been confirmed as far as I know.
yeah, no. Well, they still have it sealed until until
The
when is
sentencing,
it?
maybe?
The sentencing on July 23rd, 2025. They have everything sealed still till then, and then supposedly we're going to get more then on that day. But I I find it so frustrating that with Chris Watts, they didn't make him tell what he did, to save his life, and they're not making Bryan Kohberger tell the details to save his life. So what I think, like, what's the point of having the death penalty? Even if you're for it or you're against it, it's supposed to be the ultimate, penalty. And these two, in my opinion, are the ultimate killing machines. So why are we using it as a bargaining chip?
Well, what comes to mind when you say that? I'm reminded of that girl who most likely murdered her own child and got away with it. She was acquitted.
Casey
Um,
Anthony.
yes, I couldn't remember her name. Yeah, Casey Anthony. That's a very good example of what happens when you go after a murder one charge and it doesn't stick. They get away. They can't be charged again on a murder two now. I mean, it's already done. I think I forget what the charges she got, or what she pled, or what she got. There was a few charges. I can't remember what they were, but she served some time for them.
Just for lying to the police and stuff like that, obstruction of justice, but it was time served because she had spent so much time in there.
But that's always a possibility with the jury. You don't know what the jury is going to hear and see through the evidence. You don't know what they already know, and you don't know how they form opinions. There's rules that they're supposed to, not take into account anything else. But there's part of us, I mean, part of your mind, your unconscious mind, even that just helps you make a decision, and you can't control that in other people, even with the rules. And it was a very real possibility that he didn't get the death penalty because the jury could have acquitted him. Maybe the prosecutors felt that maybe with all the news coming out, if my opinion changed, everyone else's, I mean, at least some of everyone else's opinions might have also changed at least a little bit. And depending on what evidence was shared at the trial, it could, always go back to guilty, or it could go forward into maybe he's really not guilty at all. It's kind of how they present the information, what information's allowed to be presented, and then each individual juror has to decide what information that they hear has more weight than other information and make a decision. And it's not always black and white. There's always a possibility that someone doesn't believe he's guilty.
Mm.
And with the
But we
change of
also
plea, he
don't know.
admits it.
There could have been more evidence, like that we don't even know. And
That's true. Yeah.
and
I
I,
mean,
I just feel like that Dateline pretty put the nail in his coffin, and he knew it. He just knew
See,
it.
I think that did the opposite, because
Oh,
that's what kind
no.
of changed my mind. I started like immediately like, you know, questioning everything. I'm like, they're making this guy look guilty.
He
You know,
was guilty.
but
The
you
other
know,
day I did Jody Who's in Truth. And at the beginning, I was like, we were saying who we thought it was because there was these 4 new people in the case. And I was like, you know who I don't think it is? I don't think it's the most obvious guy, this John Van Scythe, because it's just too obvious. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, it's John Van Scythe. It's the most obvious one. Sometimes when it's the most obvious one, it's the most obvious one. Right.
yeah. I don't know. I've done a lot of research on different killers, and the one thing that I always say, and it seems so obvious, but it just it just bothers me to think about the most ordinary person, like if you imagine that person, like a lot of these serial killers are that person. And then once they find out, once they get caught and it comes out what they did, then you can see the monster, but you usually can't see it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Um, but I think Kohberger would have done it again, 100%
Oh,
sure. He would
yeah.
have. He
That's a
was
good
like,
point.
he was on, yeah, he would have been murdering for a few more years if he had
For
not gotten
sure.
caught. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think he should have been able to, like, if you have that much knowledge on how crime scenes work, it seems like you would know what not to do. But in his case, I think the adrenaline and the fame he was hoping for probably made him forget things. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know, but
I don't think he was expecting Xana. I think she was the one that shocked him because he was upstairs. And I think she heard some stuff going on and she crept up the stairs, and then, then he had to race down, and then he had to do Ethan because Ethan, and so I just don't think he expected. I think he was just, I've always thought he was going after Maddie. Everyone was saying Kaylee, and I was like, no, it's definitely Maddie. And this, you want to know why I think she was going after Maddie? Um, and this is just my opinion, all for entertainment, educational purposes only. But if you looked at Maddie's boyfriend, he was nerdy. If you looked at Maddie's boyfriend, he was nerdy looking. And I think Bryan thought that he should be able to have a chance with her. And Maddie was beautiful. And he thought, why is she choosing him? If Maddie's boyfriend had like a little bit of a receding hairline. But you could tell he was probably one of those popular guys that he didn't, like his looks weren't everything to him. And, so I think that's why he went after Maddie personally.
yeah,
Can't prove it.
I can't. I mean, I don't know. The Dateline thing, they showed the pool party and how that's how they like first encountered them, or something, right? Like there was a pool, some kind of
Yeah,
pool
some kind of pool
activity,
party at the
but
Wallows, or I can't remember the name of it, but yeah.
and then he got invited to a hiking group or something.
Yeah,
And
and he was going the opposite direction. They were coming away from the darkness, and he was walking into the darkness.
yeah.
Hey, Olga, how are you? Sorry, I missed you saying hi. I'm glad you liked the topic. I thought it was fascinating. I think that both of them they pled guilty, and as a direct result of the parents. I did find this video of Chris Watts and his mother. They were giving this interview of when they went to Dodge Correctional to meet with Chris Watts, and I think one of the reasons why I think they believed Chris from the start, although I am confused a little bit by the letter that he wrote, but I think Chris Watts' parents are finally starting to understand that Chris is guilty, and they're having questions. And this is an interview that they gave. Have you heard this interview where they went into Dodge Correctional and they're talking about the plates and how could the girls fit through because of the plates?
I don't think I have. I haven't watched any
Do
of their
you have to
interviews with
leave? Do
Dave.
you have time for this? I know you have to leave in a moment.
Yeah, I do have to leave in a little bit, and I was gonna tell you I have a short on Bryan Kohberger that kind of explains exactly what I felt whenever I found out he was guilty for sure. If you wanted to play that, but
Where is
I have
it? Yeah, I'll start this playing, and then where is it? And I'll look for the short.
It's just on my channel under
On
the
your
shorts. It should be
channel?
like the last few days ago. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Do right by them. He wants to, and even said God's prayers were answered. You know, that Frank called and said, I have a place in his heart. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Yeah, Frankie's in the dark. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, he's in the dark about it all, and he's the one that's actually being used by Sandy, you know, to be the voice of the family because he's more believable.
Yeah, because I know there's no way Sandy will get on the phone with him.
I just want to say that we support the Rusaks on this channel, and these are some of the things I don't agree with. The Rusaks are.
Let me move it forward. I thought it was keyed up at the right place.
So he's not blowing up the Rusaks about this, that, or the other. I said he's just looking for answers, Chris. I said the name of this channel is.
No, I'm saying.
We brought everything.
Hey,
Wednesday or Thursday. He said, but I thought you'd wait till Wednesday or Thursday. He said, I didn't know you were going to bring everything up tonight. And we.
She's saying that the first night that they went to see him, they started to bring all of this up to him.
We brought everything to him. Everything.
Really?
Everything. And he's the what? Oh, you tell him that. Oh my God, Ronnie was dramatic.
Well, I was dramatic.
You were dramatic.
I'm pretty proud of him for doing that.
He was saying that he just got finished eating, and I got a paper plate because once he sits down, he can't get up. He can't look at the food. He's not allowed to move once he sits down. And the food stuff was right behind us, you know. And I got him the food. And he's eating a cheeseburger and stuff.
I mean, considering Ronnie, and he seems like he's a really kind of easygoing, doesn't really want to say too much to rock the boat. Like, I think it probably took a lot for Ronnie to do that, to throw the plate in front of Chris and say what he said.
I got another plate, and I just threw it down on the table in front of him. And I said, see that right there, Chris? I put my hand across it like I did that plate at the house. I said, that's an 8-inch plate. Pretty much, it might be maybe a little bit smaller, but it's pretty much an 8-inch plate. I said, you look at that.
So I feel like I see progress with the Watts. I see, you know, in the beginning, I just total denial, I think. And I've just seen.
This was in 2022, the end of 2022.
Progress. And so that makes me feel good.
I wish they would at least openly apologize for being kind of jerks in the beginning, at least, you know. But I think I'm one of the few people that actually has a little bit of sympathy for Cindy, even though she's kind of seems like a mean person.
I think a lot of people have sympathy for her now. I mean, I do. I mean, it's changed for, I think, a lot of people. In the beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, but she was just acting from pure trauma, just like anybody else. Some people come out like a caged tiger. Other people come out differently. And I just, yeah, I think a apology would be nice, but I don't hold my breath for it. Which one of these is the one you wanted me to do?
Kohberger fooled you. It's a second one from the top. I got a green face.
This one?
Yeah, that's it.
This one says everyone is talking about the case.
Yeah.
Oh, Kohberger fooled you. Got it. Oops, hold on.
Bryan Christopher Kohberger. It's the story that everyone's been following, that everyone has been talking about. We've all gone through the cycle of did he actually do it? His guilt seems so real and so absolute in the beginning, especially when his alibi came out that he was out stargazing on a cloudy night. Yeah, I didn't buy it then. But I will admit that as soon as the defense attorney started talking, I started to have my doubts. So, first of all, I'm glad that he's been caught. I'm glad that he's going to remain behind bars. I'm glad that he can't do this again. I hope that the victims get some bit of comfort knowing that the guy that did this has indeed been caught, that there is nobody else, that there wasn't some mysterious person wandering around that night. He's accepted 4 life sentences. I don't know how much time he got for the 1 count of burglary, but he also pled guilty to that. Bryan Kohberger. He was a PhD candidate. These are people who are supposed to be studying this information to protect people, not to go out and try it himself. You know, there's thousands of students studying this topic every day. There's millions of people sitting in their homes every day watching true crime stories. You know, when I write about true crime, I'm thankful that I don't have to see what I'm describing, because I've seen a couple things that I can't unsee, and I don't want that in my mind if I don't absolutely have to. I still have some questions, some things that don't really add up. That might be just my mind. There's a conspiracy. Convicted a murderer. He's in prison. And yes, I'm aware that one of those families is very upset that Bryan Kohberger did not get the death penalty. And I don't blame him. Yes, Bryan Kohberger pled guilty. Yes, he's going to be staying in prison for the rest of his life. But will there ever be enough justice?
I feel like it's not just one of the families, though. It's more like 2 of the families.
I thought there was only one of the dads.
No, Xana's family's not happy either.
Oh, well, the news I saw was only one guy was complaining, but yeah. They didn't even talk to the guy I was talking about. I can't remember his name, but I don't have my notes.
Families are fine with it, and 2 are not. So,
well, I don't think they even talked to them about it before they talked to Bryan's parents, because supposedly their parents were on a plane because he was going to make a plea deal before the victims' families knew anything about it, and they're supposed to contact the victims' families and let them know this stuff before they do a change of plea deal. Victim notification has to be, like it's a priority, I think.
Well, they said that they did meet with them like 2 weeks before. It was nothing to do with the plea deal, but they were like talking about, the case, and they were getting the people ready to testify. And at the very end, they said, "Oh, by the way, we're discussing a plea deal, but it's not going anywhere." Like that's what they threw that out there at the very end, and but they made sure to say but it's not going anywhere. And so the family was like, "Oh, okay, it's not going anywhere." So then apparently they wrote him a letter and told them that they were doing the plea deal. So that's how the family found out.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel for that guy. He was like, one guy for 4 murders. It's like easy math. I think he said something like that. I kind of feel like, yeah, I think he deserves the death penalty, but I don't know. I would never be able to be the person who makes that decision. So if I was involved in a case like this, I would have to tell the prosecutor, I'll let you use your best judgment, because that's not a decision I want to be a part of. But
Yeah. Well,
I'm
we know
not
like the Chris
anti-death
Watts's
penalty.
prosecutor said he flew out to and spoke to the Ruchaks and spent the weekend, and they said they didn't want it, which I always thought it was ridiculous. Like, I never believed for a second that the Watts prosecutor didn't take Chris to the ultimate because the Ruchaks didn't want it. I just think it was easier for them and it was a slam dunk. And I think the same thing is holding true for Bryan. It's just easier, and they're using it as a bargaining chip. And I don't know if I'm for the death penalty or I'm not for the death penalty, but we have the death penalty, and it's supposed to be for the ultimate. And in my opinion, these are the ultimate crimes. And so, how are we letting these ultimate crimes get away, but we're going to send somebody to death that killed one person? Or, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But that's the country
Yeah.
we live in. Every state
I
gets to
think it
choose.
has to do with the case and the evidence, and also public opinion, because they got to pull a jury from the public.
It's supposed to
There's
be
a
how
there's a
brutal it is. Is it brutal or isn't it brutal? And it's supposed to go by that.
I don't. This is a terrible crime, and actually every murder is.
Yeah.
But
a good point.
the thing is, with the American justice system, they have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's not as easy as it sounds. And whenever they get a plea deal, then that guy is definitely in prison. He can't appeal it because that's part of the deal. You can't appeal this. You can't, say there was some bogus information in here and I want to dispute it. You give up all those rights.
Yeah.
When you go with the jury and you have a trial and you get a guilty verdict, you still got the chance for an appeal for a number of different reasons. And,
But is he going to do that thing that Chris did? When that filing that, I always forget the numbers, but that thing that is he going to try to do that bullshit?
Well, it didn't work for him because it
it
wasn't valid.
You're right.
I think even if they got Nicole Kessinger out there being like, hey, you know what? I was a party to this. I don't think they could. I don't think Chris has a chance of getting a new trial ever.
Oh, no. The only thing I worry about is them being alive is that prison reform. Like, one day things change. Like, the world is completely different than it was, like, even when I was a kid, and things change. And will it become, like, unconstitutional to keep somebody locked away for their entire life? Like, will that someday happen? Like,
that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Colorado, I think it happened a year after he was convicted. And, if he'd gotten the death penalty, he wouldn't be on death row anymore. That's all gone. Everybody that was on death row has been changed. Their sentence has been changed to life in prison. He would have been in life, have life in prison also.
Yeah. It's just amazing to me that neither deal was that they had to tell their story of what they did. That was neither one that was part of their deal. They just have to say, yeah, I did it. That's bullshit. Yeah. That makes me mad.
You should have to say why. I really, because that's what I want to know. That's why I follow true crime. I want to know why. Like, I want to try to understand it. I know I'll never be able to understand it, but I still want to try.
I know.
None of it ever makes sense, and I just keep trying to understand it. Well, if this psychological theory applies and you think of it this way, well, then you can kind of understand, but even then you still can't understand. I don't know. I'm still praying for the day that we get the pre-crime division, like in that Tom Cruise movie where they predict murder before it happens.
I don't think we're too far from that either. The government's doing some pretty wild stuff with our brains. So,
yeah. Well, Amy, I do have to get going.
I know.
I just want to thank you for having me on. I'm sorry I'm kind of tired today, but
it's okay. No, I know you have to go call the kiddos and stuff. So,
yeah.
Thanks for stopping by, Robert.
Have a good day.
Okay, bye. That was Robert from Timeless Mysteries. Here is his page. be sure to head over and check him out. He does a lot of stuff on the Watts case. We probably share the same people, but I do want to let you know that's his channel. Go check him out. It's a great channel. I wanted to continue on. I knew he was going to have to leave midway. I wanted to actually go in and look at some of Kohberger's plea deal, and I wanted to go in and look at some of Watts's plea deal to wrap up the night. So be sure to give this live a thumbs up. Helps us go out into the algorithm, party out there, bring more people back to the party. It's just a free way to help us out. Today, we're coming to you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Getting into this is when the Watts prosecutor had decided to do a press conference to announce the plea deal that was going to happen. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Let me sure. So this was a press conference that the prosecutor in the Watts case was getting ready to do. The rechecks were here. Let me move it.
Pregnancy as it relates to Nico Watts, and 3 counts of unlawful tampering with a
Is it so
deceased human
quiet?
body. There was a sentencing agreement that calls for the defendant
you guys
to be
hear that?
sentenced to the Department of Corrections for the remainder of his natural life as to counts 1, 2, and 3. All of those sentences will run consecutively to one another. There's also an agreement that whatever sentence the court imposes as to count 6 will also run consecutively to count.
Is that better, Olga?
The remainder of the sentencing will be left to the discretion of the court. That sentencing will occur November 19th at 10 o'clock in the morning. The final piece of the sentencing agreement calls for the district attorney's office, myself, to agree that as a result of his plea of guilty, that he will not face the death penalty. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions about that, so let me address that right up front. Present here in the room with us today is Frank Rusick, Sandra Rusick, and Frank Rusick Jr., Shanann's brother, mom and dad.
It's as loud as I'm going to be.
Red and I flew out to North Carolina about 3 weeks ago and spent quite a bit of time with the Rusick family talking about the state of the death penalty in Colorado, the realities of the death penalty. We explained to them the extraordinary delays that currently exist in the state of Colorado as the result of, in part, the actions of our current governor. We discussed the fact that an individual by the name of Nathan Dunlap was convicted and sentenced to death in 1996 and is still alive today. We discussed all of the possible consequences, delays, penalties, timeframes, and I hope I'm saying this accurately. I know they'll correct me if I am wrong, but they were very strongly in favor of a resolution in this case, short of the death penalty. That, to me, was the most important consideration in deciding how to proceed with this case.
I don't believe that for a second. Like I said to Rob, I think he just didn't want to do it, just like the other prosecutors. I think they wanted it to be over for their state. They didn't want any more attention, especially the Idaho 4. They wanted that to go away. I mean, the fact that they tore down the house before the trial was even set to happen, they wanted that little bit of bad press to go away.
However, as they know, after we had those meetings at their home in North Carolina, I came back and had meetings with all the law enforcement partners you see standing up here today, with the supervisors in my office, in consultation with other district attorneys around the state. And to a person, the advice and suggestions that I was given was, you do what the victim's family wants you to do in this case. I don't know how I could have sat in Sandy's kitchen and asked her to commit the next 25 years of her life to the criminal justice system without any assurances that that sentence, if ever imposed, or excuse me, if ever obtained, would ever actually be imposed. I want to take an opportunity to thank the law enforcement partners who are standing up here and those who are not up here. This investigation, this prosecution was exactly what local, state, and federal cooperation should look like. The Frederick Police Department, the Greeley Police Department, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of
It's always so annoying when they all start to pat themselves on the back. This is what it should look like exactly. Pat, back.
Investigation all worked in conjunction, with one another to present to our office a case that could give this resolution and hopefully this closure to Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico's family. Understand that this is not over. As I said, we have a sentencing hearing in a couple of weeks. I'm going to give Director John Camper from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation an opportunity to say a few words here in a couple of minutes. But understand that at this point, I still can't answer questions about the facts surrounding the investigation because at least at this point, the judge has not formally accepted those guilty pleas and imposed sentence. After that sentencing hearing, we will have an opportunity to answer the questions that I know many in the media, many in the public have had from the day this investigation started. But before we answer any questions, I want to invite up Director John Camper.
Thanks, Mr. Rourke. I think it goes without saying when something so horrible happens, it's really not possible to be particularly celebratory. But that said, I think all of us are gratified at the outcome here, primarily for Shanann's family, but also the many investigators and other professionals, as Mr. Rourke said, some who are represented here and many who are not, who have devoted so much time, energy, and frankly, emotion into this tragic case. Really all everyone wanted throughout was justice for Shanann and Bella and Celeste, and we're certainly pleased that this seems to be the outcome. So on behalf of the CBI and I think the other organizations and many who were involved in this, our deepest condolences to the Ruzicks and their family and friends. Thank you.
I'll be happy to answer questions, but I will be the first to tell you that I truly appreciate the Ruzicks being present, not only in the state of Colorado, but in this room. I can tell you on behalf of them, they are not prepared, nor do they want to answer questions at this point. I hope you all will respect that. I will try to answer questions as best I can on their behalf, at least today. So what questions can I answer for you all?
Could the death penalty ever be imposed in the state?
I don't know. We have a governor in office right now who, understandably, we have an election going on today. He is term limited. We have a governor who has refused to make a decision as it relates to Nathan Dunlap. I explained that to the Rusick family, and obviously that gives them some pause when I'm asking them to endure a 4 or 5 year delay prior to a trial, and many more years after that of appeals and post-conviction hearings before that sentence could ever possibly be imposed. So when the question was asked of me by their family, what is the realistic outcome of this particular case as it relates to the death penalty, the best I could tell them is I don't know.
You said that they requested that you not seek the death penalty. How did that affect your process?
I went through the same process I would have had their answer been different. I had in my mind from the day this occurred, the steps in the process that I felt like were due diligence in order to come to this decision. I don't think any elected district attorney ever wants to have to make a decision about whether or not to seek the death penalty as it relates to an individual. But when I have a family who has been so incredibly supportive and so incredibly firm in their belief that the death penalty not be sought, I don't know how I would have said to them, I'm going to do it anyway.
How early into the process was that decision made?
The decision was made about 4 days ago. I think there were a lot of emotions that went through their mind. And again, they're going to throw something at me if I say something inappropriate. I think that there was a combination of relief, extraordinary sadness that we ever had to have that conversation in the first place. And I can only say that I hope there is a sense of closure. I know that that will never be fully realized because obviously the tragedy that sits before us today is the loss of 4 beautiful lives. And no matter what happens today, no matter what happens at a sentencing hearing down the road, we can't get them back. Sandy said it very, very poignantly to me. She said, he made the choice to take those lives. I do not want to be in a position of making the choice to take his. And so that's about as firmly as she could have said it to me. And that was very compelling to all of us as we were talking about how to proceed on this case.
Chris Watts first said Shanann actually killed a few little girls. What was his story when he changed his mind? Or did they kill before Shanann got home?
Carol, I don't know the answer to that question. We talked a lot about whether we would require him to come forward and give us what we believe to be a complete, accurate, and truthful statement. I think all of those who were involved never truly believed that he would give us an accurate statement. What I can tell you most affirmatively today by what happened in the courtroom is the spotlight that he tried to shine on Shanann falsely, incorrectly, and frankly, a flat out lie has been corrected. The
I mean, no. And you should have made him tell what it was in front of a courtroom, not had people go out later, fly out while afterwards and get more lies and untruths and mixed with anchored with truth and
spotlight shines directly where it belongs, on him. Those are still sealed at this point. I need to have a conversation with the coroner's office, with Shanann's family, and the county attorney representing the coroner's office about at what point in time those will become a public record. We are not assuming that the sentencing hearing goes the way we believe that it will and goes forward, we will not be asking those be.
So it looks like it was very similar to the Kohberger case here, where they kept everything sealed. Well, they still somehow, Chris managed to keep the autopsy sealed. I wonder if Bryan's going to manage to keep anything sealed for life. I don't think he will, because none of them are his kids, but I don't know.
Sealed any longer after the sentencing hearing. Several weeks ago. I can't tell you the exact date, but it's been several weeks in the making. We had very preliminary discussions prior to visiting the Rusiks in North Carolina.
Was it just a matter of the death penalty?
You'd have to ask them. All I can tell you is the discussions that we had with them, and frankly, the discussions that Mr. Wren and I had with the Rusik family made it very clear that there was going to be no further concession. I didn't feel like this was a case where it was appropriate to agree to dismiss some counts in exchange for a plea of guilty to others, because we charged him with what we truly believed he had done at the time we filed that complaint. And I was not willing to entertain any further concessions above and beyond removing the death penalty from consideration.
During your investigation, did you ever get a motive from Chris Watts?
Ask me again in 2.5 weeks, or the day after the day of sentencing. I'll be happy to answer that question. At this point, that's getting a little bit too far into the investigation, at least as we sit right now. We believe that we have a partial motive. I'm not sure if it's the entirety of the motive, but I'll be happy to comment on that following the sentencing. You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Whether or not he's in solitary confinement where he serves his time, whether it be in what DOC facility in the state of Colorado, or if he's one who's transferred to another state, is left to the discretion of the executive director of the Department of Corrections. I don't know. Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. I think that the plea of guilty to each of those counts, naming those individual victims, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, was an important consideration, but also he deserves a life sentence for each and every act on top of one another. In practicality, it doesn't make a difference in terms of how long he's ultimately going to serve. But what he needs to understand is he will be serving 3 consecutive life sentences plus a sentence for Nico Watts because of the acts that he committed against all 4 of them. It was important that each of those beautiful human beings be reflected in the ultimate sentence that will be imposed.
Does he remain in solitary confinement in jail?
I don't know what the status of him being held in the jail is. I would expect, I'm speculating or surmising that that's probably something the sheriff would look into or will do pending sentencing, but I don't know where he sits today. I don't know. I presume that it was for his own protection. From whom, I don't know. I think that that's a standard safety measure that the sheriff will take in very high-profile cases. I appreciate the sheriff's diligence in protecting him as well as everybody else who's in the courtroom.
Have you ever had a case like this with also doing into the investigation?
No.
Have you had a case like this?
No.
Does that do the overwhelming amount of evidence in some ways that you think that you had in this case?
I don't know the reason why they approached us initially. I don't know what their thought process was in terms of making this offer to us that was at least compelling enough that we wanted to get on a plane and fly out and see the Rusik family in person. This was not a conversation we were going to have over the telephone or over Skype. But what caused them to come to us in the first place, I don't know. I don't know what it was that pushed them over the tipping point, so to speak.
Did they come with a plea agreement that was similar to what was on most day?
Initially, no. Recently, yes. As of a couple of days ago, yes.
2 separate
Yes.
offers?
Yes.
How does this make you feel?
Sick, saddened. As Director Camper said, no one wins today. I never wanted to have to stand up and have a press conference like this. I'm saddened that I had to meet the Rusik family under these circumstances. It's been a pleasure working with them and meeting them and knowing them. But as the director said, there is no cause for celebration today.
Will the Rusiks be making statements in the same?
I believe so. That's a conversation that we started when they flew in yesterday, and I'm going to give them some time to thoughtfully decide how they want to proceed at sentencing. So if they don't, Mr. Roach, Mr. Wren, and I will be happy to speak on their behalf. Any other questions?
Investigation is going to be a pro forma sentencing for large part. So why conduct that?
Oftentimes, even in Class 1 felonies, we ask that the probation department complete a pre-sentencing investigation report, as Mr. Wren said, because the Department of Corrections actually benefits from that information, helps them in classifying offenders more quickly when they reach the regional diagnostic center. I understand the judge's desire to have a sentencing hearing done sooner rather than later, but we were endeavoring to try to do both in order to assist DOC with the classification determination they would have to make. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, and I want to take a quick peek finally at the Kohberger prosecutor. This is Bryan Kohberger's prosecutor reveals chilling step-by-step account of the unaliving, the murderers' bloodlust unalivings of the 4 Idaho students.
Has been prepared to do would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Ms. Kohberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Manny Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Okay, guys, that's all I have for tonight. I'm gonna head out. Be sure to support our sponsor, Wild Deodorant. I will put the link down in the show notes and in chat. Use Parawomen as the code, and you will get 20% off. Every little bit helps. And be sure to give this live a thumbs up. Thanks, guys. If nobody's told you this today, and even if they have, thank you, Olga, for being here. If nobody's told you this today, and even if they have, I'm still going to tell you this. I love you guys so, so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
I miss my cue, but baby, I had you. Miss my cue, but I had you for that day. Here in the blue, I'm falling deep.
Be sure to give this live a thumbs up. Helps me go out into the algorithm party out there. Bring more people back to the party. It's just a free way to help me.
Baby, I'm dancing with you tonight, and it feels fine, feels fine. Baby, I'm dancing with you tonight. Here in the blue, I'm dancing and falling out, hoping for some time with you.